And now, so let's switch to English for our following panel discussion, because I have the pleasure and the honor to receive two ladies, and we're going to talk about the way IA can get the insurance more inclusive. And please welcome Mrs. Judith L. French from the Department of the Insurance of Ohio. She's the director. Welcome. And Mrs. Sostenes Konutse, Executive Director of BIMA, Ghana. Okay. Good to see you. You traveled so far to be with us today, and we're going to take 20 minutes to talk about this very interesting topic, because we know that for decades insurance was often seen as a product for a few, and as I said earlier, there is a very important growth potential for insurance in Africa. I mean, excluded South Africa. We know that in Africa, you know, the penetration rate is around 3%, 5%, 2% in some countries. And our discussion will be, we're going to deal about the way that to use AI for getting insurance more inclusive. So my first question is for you, Judith. So how can we use AI to make insurance more inclusive? Simple question.
Thank you for the question, and thanks for having me. It's a real honor to be here. I think we can use AI to make insurance products more inclusive and accessible. You know, one way to think about that is the more affordable insurance is, the more inclusive it is. And so a lot of the things we've talked about today are about streamlining processes, and whether that's streamlined and simplified claims processing, or whether it's risk assessment, you know, everything that goes into pricing insurance, if it's more affordable, it can be more inclusive. But the other thing, and we've talked a lot about this today, the way that insurance has also become and can become even more personalized. And so if you know, the last session was about auto insurance. I'm a little frightened by all the data that's being collected, to be honest, as a regulator. But you know, the more personalized that can be, you can save money that way. My 88-year-old mother uses an app on her phone in her car to save money, to the point where she won't use her phone if I'm driving, because she's a little afraid that I'm going to mess up her discount. But you know, that makes insurance more personalized, and I think more accessible to a lot of people. You can think of the same thing with health insurance, homeowners. The more you're being monitored, the more personalized it can be. The flip side, and one thing I think about though out of concern, is that the more data that's being gathered, you know, that's going to include a lot more people. It's also going to exclude people. And so if you're not a good driver, if your lifestyle is not as healthy as your neighbors, you may be excluded from insurance, or it may become a lot more expensive. So I think we have to also keep our eye on the ways that it is excluding people.
Yeah, so that will lead us maybe to talk about ethics. That's very important, and regulation too. Sothenes, just can you introduce BIMA, because it's a very you're a pioneer in the insurance sector and the micro insurance sector. So what is BIMA?
Okay, so it's BIMA.
Sorry.
Yes, it's fine. So BIMA actually in East Africa is a Kiswahili word which means insurance. So I mean, when BIMA was starting, it started from Ghana in West Africa in 2010. But of course, we borrowed the name BIMA from East Africa to start BIMA's operations. And just like Judith mentioned, it's all about inclusive insurance, getting a lot more people access into insurance penetration. So the whole essence of Bima was to be able to create the level of affordability, accessibility for everybody, irrespective of how much you earn, to be able to come under insurance. So the whole thing was where we started by using mobile phone technology to be able to give access to everybody else to have insurance. Many people cannot afford insurance, but in 2010, that time, everybody could afford airtime on their phone. So people had airtime on their phones, and we were able to, for the first time in the world, starting from Ghana, was able to move that airtime data to become insurance premium, to pay for insurance, so that a lot more people, for the first time ever in their lives, would have access to insurance and will be able to benefit from the benefits of insurance that all of us in this room normally benefit from. So that's the whole thing about Bima. But of course, our business operations has evolved over the period from this mobile phone technology model to mobile money payment systems. And then we are covering a lot more people and even going upper the social class into a lot more inclusive spaces and giving people a lot more value. We've transitioned our operations from merely being funeral insurance or hospital cash insurance into health, telemedicine technology, and using that technology to be able to give access to a lot more people now to have health insurance. I mean, in the case of Ghana, typically, we have the National Health Insurance System, which is largely catering for the last mile or the very poor, because for those of us who are corporate employees or who are a bit more middle class, most of us would go in for private health insurance that gives us access to private hospitals and facilities and all of that. But then we have been able to use our technology, the telemedicine technology, to be able to create access and affordability to be able to allow a lot more Ghanaians to have private health insurance and be able to access the private facilities as well and have the benefits that it brings to them. Yeah.
So, talking about regulations, can you tell us how regulation has affected the evolution of using of AI to make insurance more not affordable but more inclusive?
Yeah, so the president of GI, Ghana Insurance Association, was here earlier in the morning, and he made mention about the sandbox evolution. He spoke about the TSP arrangement. So Ghana's regulation has really evolved. I mean, from the traditional insurance space, we created room for, think about the mobile phone that I spoke about, the mobile phone insurance I spoke about. When we started this idea of bringing premiums to pay for insurance, premiums or airtime is a commodity, it's not money. So you couldn't convert that. We've had to go all the way to the central bank, the Bank of Ghana, to be able to allow access. And the NIC, the insurance regulator, worked with the central bank to create that access for us to convert airtime to become premium to pay for insurance. So that is how revolutionary the Ghanaian regulator has been over the period. And our regulation has evolved over the period from mobile insurance guidelines to the new act currently where sandboxes have been introduced and then where technical service providers are independent. They are not brokers. So Bima is a technical service provider under our license regime. We have the right to be able to we do not underwrite, but we develop solutions. We do everything within the value chain, but then we sit behind the license of a traditional insurance underwriter, but then the underwriter does not worry about how to reach the last mile. He leaves all of that to us, and we do all of these things because we have the technology and we have the patience and the last mile to be able to reach those guys. So we use our technology to be able to do that, and that is how the regulator has been open to the idea of revolutionizing or increasing access to everybody using technology and the evolution of AI currently.
Judith, about regulation, what regulatory steps must be taken for this underserved people that we say that that need insurance? So what kind of regulatory steps can be taken?
I think the first thing we can do is be open to the new, whether it's revolutionary, whether you have a new company, a startup, or a 100-year-old company that wants to do something new and be more inclusive and more affordable, to be open to that and be willing to help. I know Morocco has a program, as does the state of Ohio and other states in the US. So that's I think the first thing, is to work with somebody who has an idea and make sure that they can be compliant. I think it's also important for us to think about the ethics around AI. You know, the last panel talks so much about the data that's being collected, and it's really important, I think, for regulators to have a set of guidelines for companies to say, this is how you will use the data, and making sure that consumers understand what data they're giving up. So we want them to be ethical, but we need to set those guidelines. They need to be able to explain to us what is the algorithm, how is it being used, make sure that we understand the data that's going into the algorithm, and make sure that it's not biased in any way. So I think as we look into the future, we're going to have to be more vigilant about everything that's being collected, but not lose sight that's really the future, to make it more inclusive and more affordable.
Well, sometimes we can say that's just a matter of cost, not to have an insurance. Is that true? Becky, sometimes it's a matter of mindset that some people won't take an insurance. It said when you add the need, or when you tell people we're going to use your data to make you to give you access to insurance, is that something that you take in account, not only cost, mindset, acceptation?
Yeah, very, very interesting question. So for us, for instance, who are very much in the health space, we do deal with a lot of customer health data. And we are in a position currently where we are thinking to what extent we can use this health data. We want to personalize as much as possible. We want to be able to use AI as much as possible. But you think about it from many ways. Regulation currently in Ghana does not necessarily talk about AI specifically, right? But of course, there's always room for self-regulation as well. We have data from our telemedicine service where we do have a lot of health data on individuals. Now, this data extends to even our partner facilities when we refer our customers to go to individual traditional clinics and hospitals. We get data back from these facilities as well. All that data sits with us. Now, we've been thinking about AI recently, and in our doctor service, where the teledoctors are consulting with the customers, we were thinking of using Copilot, for instance, to be able to help us in predictive diagnosis and all of that. We have had to self-regulate ourselves and at a point hold back. This was something that we had introduced in other markets, but then we got to Ghana and we decided to say, well, let's hold back on this forum because we have not communicated that enough to the customers. How earlier this morning, the Connecticut regulator was talking about to what extent people know that their data is being used, to do other things. So we thought about all of those things and we are like, well, third parties who provide these data, who provide these services. If I give that much Ghanaian health data to a third-party provider, what is the guarantee that this data will be used appropriately or will not be used for other things? And we've had to hold on that to be sure that we have been able to ask the right questions, be able to get the right, speak to regulators to understand whether they are comfortable with this before we can go ahead to be able to do that. So the question is really right to say to what extent people are willing for their data to be used. We worry about that as well. We want to use it to personalize and be able to make it affordable a lot more, to be able to reach a lot more people. But you must think about who the third party is and how they are going to be able to use that data and what they're going to use it for. So we are in there at this point where we've had to hold back on some of the developments we wanted to do because we want to be sure that we have the right regulation in place.
Judith, that's a real, not issue, but it's a challenge. I mean, what can we expect from regulators to ensure that all the data processing or using of the data will be fair? We need transparency, and then we need trust, confidence. People must trust the regulator, the companies, the people using the data. So what can we expect from the regulators? Oh, and what are the means that they can use to say, hey, people, trust us?
I think that's an excellent point, and it really is important for the regulators to make those kinds of guidelines not only available to the companies that are gathering the data, but make sure they are communicating to their consumers. You know, when you're signing up for that app so that there's telematics being gathered in your car, are you truly understanding what's being used? Is that information being sold? And it's true, you know, Commissioner Mays did talk about the third party that's available and that might be collecting that data. But I think also the other thing that goes along with the mindset that you brought up is just, do we really have an appreciation in underserved communities about the importance of insurance, whether we're talking about AI or not, and how can we use AI to communicate that idea? And you might have a chatbot on a website, you know, anything that we can do to make it a little bit easier for them to understand that insurance is important, but that chatbot only works if it's in the right language. Is it accessible to people that may not have internet? And so I think, you know, we have to think about all of these various factors when we think about trying to reach that underserved community.
So there's always two sides of the story. We want innovation. We want to go forward, but we want insurance to be inclusive, not exclusive. So how can we make the balance? I mean, if tomorrow a company say, okay, if you want my product, we need your data, can we say to the consumers, okay, but I can say as a consumer, I don't want my data to be used this way. Will I get the insurance though? That's the real question.
Real question, especially for us in the inclusive insurance space, unfortunately, we would need a certain bit of data to be able to guarantee that level of pricing that we give you. I mean, give you an example. Traditional health insurance in Ghana, private health, minimum per person would be around $300 per year, per annum, for you to be able to be insured for any kind of traditional private health insurance. We, as BIMA, are able to offer that for as low as $3 per month, for instance, where we are able to give you a certain level of cover, which is private, to access to private hospitals. But of course, we need these data or these informations as well, and channeling you to other technologies for us to be efficient enough to be able to offer you the benefit for the price at which you offer it. So yes, you may have the luxury of wanting to say, I do not want my data to be used, but to what extent are we also guaranteed we are able to give you that level of information? You spoke earlier about excluding as well. If you are in the inclusive insurance space, in our space, for instance, where a lot of our customers may not necessarily be very educated, we do introduce our WhatsApp chatbots and all of those things, which are very efficient and bring efficiency. But again, quite a lot of the people, maybe 90% of your customer base, do not have the smartphones or would not be able to use it. So do you transition to AI? And then if you transition to AI, where you need the technology to be able to use it as well, or even the education to be able to use it, then what happens to the rest of the people? So yes, AI would work, or would introduce it to be able to help transition those who are evolving, but then quite the lower base as well. We still use our IVR technology, where we communicate with our customers via voice, using local language, recorded conversations that go out to them directly to educate them and to get them to use it. But of course, when it comes to our claims payment, and I think it's one of the ones that everybody has spoken about earlier, where we use AI for claims and for fraud detection, we've been able to do that. You do not necessarily need to be super educated to be able to do that, because even in people who are not educated use WhatsApp. So if the need arises for you to submit document, all we need for you to is to take a picture of the document, send it via WhatsApp, and just by introducing AI now, your claims processing happens within the WhatsApp algorithm, and then we are able to process your claim up to certain limits, and the claim is paid automatically without necessarily any human intervention. You submit your claim, the AI looks at it, authenticates the claim, payment is activated, and within minutes, you are able to have your money paid to you. The same AI is able to determine fraud, detect fraud as well. We've had occasions where a simple hospital cash insurance payout, where it detects fraud because over the period, there's a particular doctor in a particular hospital in a particular village somewhere who would sign documents coming through. And in the last 2 months, for instance, you had 3 or 4 different claims coming from that doctor signed. We have claims officers, that may be 20 of them, that process this individually. But once you use AI, the AI is able to determine that we have had 4 claims come from this particular doctor within a matter of 1 week, and then the next week you have claims coming from that particular doctor. AI flags it and says, please look at this claims as well. And then you're able to detect. So indeed, the practicality of using these things really help. So yes, we'll deploy them, we'll use them as much as possible on our side. When it comes to the customer, we need to be able to determine whether they can use it before we deploy to them as well. So it's always that mixed bag.
Judith, what's your point about this?
You started the question with that balance between wanting to encourage innovation and AI and revolutionizing insurance. But the other side of that is we always have the lens as regulators, what's best for the consumer. And in many instances, it may not be the most technologically advanced product for a particular consumer. So I agree with this idea that even if that consumer isn't using a smartphone, the insurers can still be using AI and all kinds of technology to make it more affordable for that consumer. And we as regulators can be on the side of making sure that whatever data is being gathered is being used in an ethical, in an ethical way. But the other thing that I think we can do as regulators is, we can collect a lot of data ourselves just in terms of who's covered, who's got insurance. If you think about natural catastrophes and some areas that are hard hit, the more we can use technology to collect data, analyze that data, that helps us understand where are the needs. So there's so much that we could all be doing, but at the end of the day, it's always about the consumer and how can we get the best product for the most consumers.
Thank you so much. Time's up. Great applause for my guests. Thank you so much for being with us and giving us this great insights.